Our series is Lasting Imprint. The first discussion this morning, the original imprint, was addressing that first of three topics. The principle of creation, the blueprint. How the universe was intended, what we can understand about its origin and the meaning of life and the ultimate reality, kind of the blueprint of life. Now we want to look at the pathology, right? The problem. If we have a clear picture of what life was meant to be, of what principles it's based upon, we can perhaps more clearly understand what went wrong and what the meaning of religion and all of human beings' historical efforts to heal the world are about. So we're going to talk about the human imprint, or man's imprint, and the contradiction within us. In other words, what is holding us back? Why is it that the world of reality is so different than the world we dream of? When I share that first presentation on every continent, with every people, every race, culture, creed of people, everybody can find some way of resonating with it, and people are inspired. We can recognize that's the kind of life that we'd love to believe in and that human beings are capable of. It's very practical, it's very real, it's not just based on scriptures. But the world doesn't look like that, does it? No, so that's what we want to investigate. We're going to talk about four things. Unfortunately, all of the it's going to be a little bit, it changed in the computer, but it's just going to be different font. I hope it fits. There might be some irregularity.
Let's start all over again. I'll get my computer out.
Well, the only problem is it's already changed in the stick. If I would take the stick and plug it into your computer, I'm not sure if it would be different. I think we'll be okay. Let's just, I think we have no choice. If it's seriously difficult, we'll everybody can read it, right? Yeah. So first we will review what we just discussed, understand the ideal and God's intention. Then we're going to look at how human beings were meant originally to fulfill it and the meaning of spiritual maturity. Then we're going to talk about the essence of the contradiction. The essence of the contradiction and the problem of self-centeredness. And then we'll look at the impact of the contradiction or falsehood in human nature, what Buddhism calls Maya or illusion, our alienation from our original selves, how that's impacted the world and human history. Those are our 4 points. So let's first of all reconsider God's ideal. We understand God's original plan in the 3 blessings. As stated in the scriptures, be fruitful, like a tree is meant to grow to maturity, fulfill its potential. And the purpose of a tree is to bear fruit, right? And the maturity of a tree is reflected when it reaches that place. So that the first purpose or meaning or blessing of human life. To become a true, authentic, original, loving person. Developing our potential to reflect the image of God that's meant to be within us. For some people, that's through spiritual pursuits, internal reflection, understanding the truth, study of scriptures, spiritual practice. Others develop and grow their heart and character and grow to become a better person by good work and acts of service and being involved in helping and loving other people. Then on that foundation of mature individuals, when such a mature man and woman enter into a relationship centered on the greater good, the higher purpose of love and goodness, that's the definition, the basis of a God-centered ideal family. Children born from such mature, loving parents would come to know the love of God, would come to find their own identity and value, not by the church they chose to worship in, or the scripture they decided to read, but from their very experience in life. It would be their living, real experience. And such loving families are the basis of healthy communities and societies, strong nations, and a peaceful world. The family, a human universal. Then on that foundation, such people of love and heart and character, such good and loving societies, human beings would then be able to take loving dominion over our environment. Stewardship, being responsible stewards of the natural world around us. Being concerned for the environment and its future. Not abusing the earth, not thinking just of the momentary profit for right now without, concern for the effect, the impact on the future. And developing our technology for the greater good and happiness and fulfillment of all people, not just a privileged few. Material success, ownership, these are natural things inside the heart and mind of people. Ownership is not just about possessions and dominance, it's about expressing myself. It's about creativity. It's about taking responsibility and giving love and to tend a garden or to develop crops or to create an artistic work that moves and inspires people or to manifest my own heart and feelings and experience in a song or these things. But the fact is, when we look at the world, do we see such ideal individuals? No, we find that people are confused about the meaning of their life. Many people waste their opportunity for life. Some feel so painful about life experience that they don't want to be in the world. How much struggle and confusion, how much waste. And also, if you look back in history and you think about the lives that were lost through injustice and suffering in the history of this country, people that were brought in chains to this country, and if their physical bodies weren't healthy, they were dumped over the side of the ship. In every time of warfare, soldiers raped women, pillaged villages. How many lives were lost? How many people oppressed through injustice? How much suffering has been in the history of humanity? How painful and difficult the reality of human life is for so many people. Even in the world today. Do we see ideal, loving families? No. In fact, we see painful relationships, struggles, misunderstandings, breakdown. We see violence and abuse, domestic violence, sexual infidelity, all kinds of immorality, and the historical war between the sexes. Today, this year, 2014, more than 1 million young people from ages 8 to 15, maybe some even younger, are being sold into sexual slavery. In the United States as well, but primarily Southeast Asia, Eastern Europe. Forced to have relationship with 30 people a day. This is the reality of the world we live in. Far from the ideal. Our children's innocence destroyed and lost. And if we look at the current situation of the world, there's been tremendous advance from the era when children were property, from the era when women were lower than men, when there was severe racial injustice and unrighteousness, and power was concentrated in the hands of a few, and governments were used to exploit people before the idea that government was there to serve people. And yet, is the reality of our world that much better? If you actually look at the reality of the world, economic injustice, it's still very extreme. More than half of the world's assets. Well, first of all, let me tell you, the 3 richest men in the world, each of them alone, owns more than 57 of the countries in the world. There are 57 countries that are more poor than the 3 richest individuals. More than half of the world's assets, the money and the bank and the land and the ownership, are in the hands of the top of 2% of the world. 2% controls more than half. North America and Western Europe comprise 12% of the world's population. And yet we control 85% of household wealth. Now, believe me, if I thought the solution was join the UN World Food Program, if I thought that would end hunger, then that's where I'd be. But I truly believe it's an awareness, a consciousness, and a personal renewal, because before we can move the world, we have to move ourselves. There are 2.2 billion children in the world today, and nearly half of them are in poverty. Is that what the parent envisions for his children? Then if we are genuinely brothers and sisters, is it enough to just say, well, I just want to enjoy my life? I'm not asking you to sacrifice and go do something ridiculous, but to become aware of our responsibility as brothers and sisters and how we can contribute to our community and our environment and to help make the world a better place. This is the reality of the world, and I've got a long list of statistics that we don't like to think about, we don't like to look at. America itself is less than 5% of the world's population, and we use about 30% of the world's natural resources and energy. And in terms of our relationship with our environment, it's one of exploitation and abuse. Tremendous pollution and short-sighted thinking and the methods of mining and the methods of doing all of these things. And I'm not just speaking as a environmentalist, but without thought of the consequences, the commercialism and the advertising and the consumerism and all of the focus. And also, we've used our incredible technology and brilliant creativity to express our fears, to express our hatreds, to express our selfishness. And so much energy and billions, if you saw the amount of money spent comparatively on education and healthcare and all those things compared with defense spending, I'm not a particularly liberal on this issue at all. And I'm not speaking politically. Just the fact is we're out of balance in the world. We're far from the ideal. The 20th century was the most inhumane century in the history of humanity, despite the fact that apartheid ended, the Berlin Wall fell down, communism ended. But during the 20th century, a couple 100 million people were killed as a result of political systems and takeovers and fascism and communism and despotism, genocide. The value of life became cheap in the eyes of so many. We call this inhumanity, man's inhumanity to man. But what does inhumanity mean? It's to be not like a human being. So that's my question. Why is the world of reality so different than the world of our dreams? Why is it? How is it that human beings have learned to become inhuman? What made us inhuman? Why the contradiction? Where does it come from? And who is the enemy? You know, when it comes to the source of the problem, human beings like to draw lines, divisions between us and them. We like to think it's that other guy over there who has a different belief system than mine. You know, it's the Muslims, or it's the Jews, or it's the Christians, or it's those people who think and believe this way, and if I blow them up, I'm going to get this result, or they're going to hell. And we like to draw the line between ourselves and others, between religious belief even. And there are many who've become cynical that religion came from somebody's desire to exploit other people, but not at all. Religious ideals come from people like Jesus and Buddha, who weren't about exploitation. Then we take those systems and turn them into exploitation and power. And a new religious teaching is like a bucket of fresh water that comes to clean the dirty floor. And so the teacher teaches, the inspiration is given, then the mop is cleaning the floor. But when the mop comes back to the bucket, what does it bring with it? The dirt from the floor, and all of a sudden it's about who's going to be the first disciple and who's going to get the most power, and let's create a system, and I'm going to be the boss, and only the people who have religious authority can interpret the scriptures, and you're going to go to hell, and you have to give me money. And And so what do you have to do with the water every once in a while? Change the water. And that's what God has done by sending new teachers, new prophets to awaken and inspire. Buddhism was a reform movement out of the Hindu culture. Christianity was a reform movement out of Judaism. And the unification movement is the same. It's to renew. So we like to draw lines between the rich and the poor too. Right? Oh, it's this rabble that came from other countries and they don't know American traditions and they're messing up our country and they don't know how to even drive on the right side of the road and they make all kinds of trouble and they take our welfare and they use our hospitals and they're not even legal and... Yeah. Or it's the rich people. It's the conspiracy of these few people that control the world. They're pulling the strings and they blew up the World Trade Center and and we get all caught up that this is the problem. It's those people over there. But the fact is, the dividing line between good and evil isn't between classes or races or religious belief. Where is the line? Where does the battle between good and evil really take place? Every single day. Right inside you and me. The front line is right here. The front line is right here. And the battle takes place every single day. And it's that realization that begins our wisdom. Instead of always pointing the finger at the other and blaming the other, that the source of my life's misery and suffering is certainly there's injustice in the world. But solving the problem is going to begin with the transformation of ourselves. This is the contention of the principle. So starting from the struggle in the individual, that gives rise to the struggle in families. The struggle between clans. Racial fighting. Religious fighting and injustice and fighting and oppression in the world. All of the struggles that go up to every single level in the world begin from the conflict within the individual. The contradiction is there. The struggle between good and evil starts there and it's manifested on every level of our life. So the first conclusion, conflict begins within each of us and expands to a world that does not reflect God's ideal. So why? Why? That's our question. What brought this conflict about? Let's look at the original purpose, how the original ideal was meant to be fulfilled. If anybody is looking for information or content of these slides, you can get the slides from me afterward. You can get them from Reverend Thalheimer, from Heather. So you don't have to scribble down everything on the slide. Try to focus more on the meaning and the main point. But you can get that information later. Let's talk about how the ideal was meant to come about. It's not just, some whim of the Creator. Let's look at spiritual maturity. Anthropologist Richard Heinberg, in his book Memories and Visions of Paradise, made a very interesting observation. He said, people in every culture and age have insisted that evil had what? A specific cause, had a starting point. That human nature is what? Not natural. It's inhuman. There's an inhumanity in us that's not our original nature. Because it has been distorted by what? By some fundamental mistake or failure that has been perpetuated from generation to generation. Now, that's a common belief of many kinds of religious people, but Heinberg said people in every culture and age have the same conclusion. Where does he get that from? See, Heinberg, as an anthropologist, he was looking at the creation myths of the world's great civilizations. And he pointed out that in every creation myth, there is always a job given to humanity or to some person, and that person always flunks the test. There's a test or a job. It's a common theme. Now, do you think that all over the world the elders were thinking, let's invent religion to exploit people? I don't think so. I think there's an innate understanding expressed all over the world. It's a common view, common awareness in all the creation myths. This, for example, is a story from West Africa of how God gave a job, a task to the sun, to the moon, and to man. Now the sun fulfilled its task and was rewarded with rulership of the sky during the day. It's obviously like a symbolic myth, right? The moon fulfilled its task and was given rulership of the sky during the night. Man's task was to take a bunch of ripened fruit and bring it to the top of a mountain and offer it to God. But along the way, the man became hungry. And guess what? He ate and was cast into a pit. Right? And there's many examples. As Heinberg said, in virtually every major creation myth, there's this element of human accountability and testing, an expectation that we're accountable to some higher authority. This is the famous Greek story of Pandora's box. She was told not to open the box until her wedding night. She opened it and evil entered the world. This is a common theme. And so we can look at the Genesis story not just from a literal scriptural standpoint, but it too. A responsibility is given, and the human beings fall short, succumb to temptation, and the world becomes distorted or distant. Even in Buddhism, there are understandings of higher spirits becoming bound to material interests and being drawn down and drawn into illusion, into Maya, to not see reality as it is, and to lose a true sense of who we are as spiritual beings. Now, these ancient stories of the origin of evil, I'm not trying to tell you that they're literally scientific history. I don't know whether and where Adam and Eve existed. I wasn't there. Right? But I don't think we're going to find a garden in the Middle East that has, on the front their name, or says Eden, 13 Eden Place or something. I don't think we're going to find the rusted chains that bound Prometheus to the rock in Greek mythology. But these stories do, what we can all agree upon is they convey some deep intuitive understanding of the reality of our human condition. A common awareness that transcends culture and race and religious belief. A common awareness that human beings have. What do these stories teach us? What are the initial lessons we can learn? First of all, this is what truths do these stories teach? Sorry for the problem with the screen here. Number one, that human beings have freedom and choice. We're conscious, self-aware, and that together with freedom comes responsibility. And that responsibility involves being accountable to something bigger than ourselves. This is in all of the stories. Some awareness that we are accountable to something greater than ourselves. And that our failure to live up to that responsibility is the origin of the contradiction within us and the origin of conflict. But there's a hopeful message there as well, because we have yet to fulfill that potential. We have yet to fulfill that purpose and value.